He turned around, presenting his back to her. "I won't look. You can put on your nightgown. Take your time." Saskia stared at his back, at the trust implicit in the gesture. Her fingers fumbled with the buttons running down the front of her dress. They'd been difficult to do up that morning with shaking hands. They were even harder to undo now. "Calvin," her voice came out small. "Yes? I can't reach all the buttons. They're in the back. Do you want help?" She should say no, should maintain some modesty. But the dress was cutting into her ribs, and she wanted it off. "Yes, please." Calvin turned around slowly. His eyes met hers, not dropping to her body, just staying on her face. "Where are the buttons?" "Between my shoulder blades, down my spine." He moved behind her. She felt his fingers on the first button, gentle and methodical. Pop, pop, pop. One by one, the buttons came undone, and Saskia could finally breathe. "There," Calvin said when the last button was free. "I'll turn back around. You change." He turned. Saskia quickly shed the dress, standing in just her chemise and petticoats. Her nightgown was laid out on the chair, plain white cotton, nothing fancy. She pulled it on quickly. It was the only nightgown she owned that didn't make her feel like a child wearing her mother's clothes. "I'm decent," she said. Calvin turned back around. His eyes widened slightly. "You're beautiful." Saskia looked down at herself. The nightgown was simple, almost shapeless. "It's just cotton." "I'm not talking about the nightgown." Calvin crossed to her, took both her hands. "I'm talking about you. Your face, your eyes, the way you're looking at me right now, scared but brave. That's what's beautiful, Saskia." She didn't know what to say to that, so she just pulled him close and kissed him again. This kiss was different, deeper, more confident. Her hands moved from his shoulders to his hair, his arms wrapped fully around her waist, and when he pulled back, his voice was rough with emotion and something else. "Saskia, I need to know. How far do you want to go tonight? Because if we keep kissing like that, I'm going to want more. And I need to know your boundaries before I lose the ability to think clearly." Saskia's heart hammered. This was it, the moment of decision. She could stop now, safe and comfortable. Or she could trust him, trust herself, trust that maybe her first time tonight didn't have to be something to endure. She took a shaking breath. "I want to try, not everything maybe, but more than kissing. I want to see if it can really be the way you described, without pain, without feeling wrong." Calvin nodded slowly. "All right, but we do this my way. Which means we take breaks whenever you need them. We talk through every step, and we stop if anything feels wrong. Agreed?" "Agreed." "Good. Now lie down. On your back." Saskia climbed onto the bed, her nightgown bunching around her legs. She lay, back against the pillows, her heart racing so fast she thought it might burst. Calvin lay beside her but didn't immediately touch her. "Close your eyes." "Why?" "Because I want you to focus on feeling, not watching." "Trust me." Saskia closed her eyes. Her other senses immediately heightened. She heard the fire crackling, smelled the wood smoke and Calvin's scent, leather and soap, and felt the softness of the quilt beneath her. Then she felt Calvin's hand on her ankle, just resting there, not moving. "I'm going to touch you," Calvin said quietly, slowly, "learning what you like. Tell me what feels good and what doesn't. Can you do that?" "Yes." His hand moved up her calf, over her knee, to her thigh, all through the fabric of her nightgown. Nothing scandalous, but Saskia's breath quickened anyway. "How does that feel?" Calvin asked. "Strange, but good. Good." His hand moved to her waist, her ribs, her shoulder. Always slow, always giving her time to adjust. "Your body is telling me a story right now. Your breathing, your heartbeat, the way your muscles tense and relax. I'm listening to that story, Saskia, and it's telling me you're ready for more." "I am," she whispered. "I think I am." "Then open your eyes. Look at me." Saskia opened her eyes. Calvin was leaning over her, his face serious and tender all at once. "What happens next might feel intense," he said. "Not painful, but intense. And if at any point you want to stop, you just say the word. Understood?" "Understood." Calvin leaned down and kissed her. But this kiss was different from the others. This kiss had purpose, promise. And as his hands began to move with more confidence, as he showed her that her body could feel pleasure instead of shame, Saskia understood something profound. This wasn't about him taking from her. This was about them discovering together, learning together, building something together that neither could build alone. And when Calvin whispered against her skin, "You're doing so well, Saskia. So brave, so beautiful," she believed him. For the first time in her 25 years, she believed she was worthy of gentleness, worthy of patience, worthy of love. The fear was still there, humming beneath the surface, but it was no longer in control. Something stronger had taken its place, trust, hope, and the beginning of a pleasure she'd never imagined possible. "Calvin," she gasped, as his touch awakened nerves she didn't know existed. I can't." "Yes, you can," he murmured. "Your body knows what to do. Just let it happen. Just feel." And she did. She let herself feel, let herself trust, let herself surrender to the gentleness of this lonely cowboy who'd promised to make it easy, and he kept his promise. Every single word of it. The fire had burned down to embers, casting the room in a soft orange glow. Hours had passed, though Saskia had lost all sense of time. There was only this. Only Calvin's patient hands and gentle words teaching her that her body was made for joy, not shame. They hadn't gone all the way. Not yet, but they'd gone far enough that Saskia understood something revolutionary. Intimacy wasn't a single destination. It was a journey. And every step of that journey could be beautiful if you traveled it with the right person. Now, they lay tangled together, both breathing hard, both changed by what had passed between them. "You all right?" Calvin asked, his voice rough with emotion and restrained desire. Saskia turned to face him, wonder written across her features. "I didn't know. I didn't know it could feel like that." "Like what?" "Like my body was made for this. Like I fit exactly right." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but these were different tears. Not fear, not shame. Something else entirely. "You made it easy, just like you promised." Calvin cupped her face, his own eyes shining. "You made it easy too. By trusting me. By being brave enough to tell me what you needed." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "I'm so damn proud of you, Saskia." She laughed through her tears. "Proud for what?" "For choosing to trust despite your fear, for not letting what those other men said define you, for being here with me, willing to learn." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Do you know how rare that is? That kind of courage?" Saskia shook her head, overwhelmed by emotions she had no names for. "It's the rarest thing in the world," Calvin said. "And I'm honored, so honored, that you gave it to me." They held each other in the dying firelight. Outside, the Colorado night was deepening toward dawn. Inside, two people who'd been strangers were becoming something more. "Calvin." Saskia whispered after a long silence. "Yes, I think..." She hesitated, then pushed forward. "I think I'm ready now. For everything. If you still want to." Calvin pulled back to search her face. "You sure?" "We don't have to tonight. We've already done so much, I'm sure." Her voice was steady now, strong. "Because I trust you, and because I don't want to be afraid anymore. I want to know what it's like when two people come together the right way. The way you described. Will you show me?" Calvin's eyes darkened with emotion and desire carefully held in check. "Yes, but slowly. And you tell me if anything hurts." "I will." What happened next was tender and careful, and nothing like what Saskia had been told to expect. Calvin kept his promise, going so slowly she wanted to scream, pausing whenever she tensed, murmuring words of encouragement and praise until her body opened to him like a flower to the sun. There was a moment of discomfort, a strange, stretching sensation that made her gasp. But Calvin stopped immediately. "Breathe," he whispered against her ear. "Just breathe through it. Your body needs time to adjust," Saskia breathed. And as she did, the discomfort eased, transformed, became something else. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, I'm all right." "You're doing so well," Calvin murmured. "So brave. So perfect." And then they were moving together, finding a rhythm that belonged to them and them alone. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward moments, adjustments, but through it all, Calvin kept talking to her, kept praising her, kept making sure she knew she was safe. When it was over, when they lay spent and trembling in each other's arms, Saskia understood what she'd been missing her whole life. This connection. This feeling of being seen and known and wanted exactly as she was. "It didn't hurt," she whispered, awe in her voice. "You really made it easy." "We made it easy," Calvin corrected. Together, Saskia turned to face him, her hand resting over his heart. "Thank you. For being patient. For waiting. For teaching me that my body isn't wrong. Your body is perfect. You are perfect." Calvin kissed her softly. "And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never forget that." They fell asleep, tangled together, as the first hints of dawn crept through the window. The giant virgin bride, who was a virgin no longer, and the lonely cowboy, who would never be lonely again. When Saskia woke hours later, sunlight was streaming through the window. For a moment she was disoriented. Then memory flooded back. Last night, Calvin. Everything they'd done and shared and discovered together. She turned her head. Calvin was already awake, propped on one elbow, watching her with a soft smile. "Morning," he said. "Morning." Saskia felt her face heat. In the daylight, with the magic of night faded, she felt suddenly shy. "I must look terrible. You look like my wife." Calvin leaned down and kissed her. "You look like the woman who trusted me enough to let me love her." "You look perfect." Saskia's eyes filled with tears. "I can't believe this is real." "That you're real. I'm real. This is real. And it's going to stay real." Calvin traced her cheekbone with his thumb. "Last night was just the beginning, Saskia. We've got a whole lifetime to keep learning each other, to keep discovering what makes us fit, even though I'm too big. You're not too big. I'm not too small. We're exactly right for each other." He grinned. "Besides, I like that you're tall. Means I have to put in effort to kiss you. Makes every kiss feel earned." Saskia laughed, a real full laugh that felt like freedom. "You're ridiculous, maybe, but I'm your ridiculous husband now. You're stuck with me. I don't feel stuck." Saskia pulled him closer. "I feel found." They spent the morning in bed, talking and laughing and occasionally kissing, learning how to be married in the daylight. Calvin told her about the ranch, about his plans, about the life he wanted to build with her. Saskia told him about her dreams, small dreams she'd never dared speak aloud because she'd never believed anyone would care. He cared. About all of it. About her. Around noon, Calvin finally got up and brought her breakfast in bed, eggs and bacon and fresh bread. They ate together, feeding each other bites, laughing when Saskia got crumbs in the sheets. "I should probably get dressed," Saskia said eventually. "The day's half gone." Or, Calvin countered, pulling her back down, "we could stay here a little longer. The ranch will survive without us for one more day. Won't people talk? Let them talk. Let the whole territory talk. I don't care what anyone thinks about us, Saskia. The only opinions that matter are yours and mine." He kissed her nose. "And I think we're doing just fine." Saskia smiled, the kind of smile that came from deep inside, from a place that had been locked away for 25 years. "Yeah, we're doing just fine." 3 months later, when Saskia stood at the general store counter in town, she heard the whispers, saw the looks, the women wondering how it worked, the men smirking about the giant and the cowboy. But Saskia didn't hunch her shoulders anymore, didn't try to disappear. She stood tall, her head high, one hand resting on her belly, where a new life was just beginning to grow. When she walked out of the store, Calvin was waiting with the wagon. He jumped down and helped her up, Not because she needed help, but because he liked touching her. Liked any excuse to put his hands on his wife. "You okay?" he asked, seeing something in her expression. They were whispering again. "About us, and I didn't care." Saskia smiled. "Because I know something they don't." "What's that?" "That when two people truly fit, nothing else matters. Not height, not what anyone says. Not fear or shame or anything else." She took his hand and placed it on her belly. "We fit, Calvin, in every way that matters." Calvin's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "Saskia, are you—" "Yes," her smile grew. "We're going to have a baby," Calvin whooped, loud enough that people turned to stare. Then he pulled Saskia down from the wagon and kissed her right there in the middle of Main Street, in front of God and everyone, showing the whole town that he didn't care what they thought. He loved his giant wife. She loved her patient husband. And together they were building something beautiful. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless and grinning, Saskia whispered, "Thank you." "For what?" "For making it easy. For teaching me I wasn't too much. For giving me this." She gestured between them, at the life they'd built, at the future growing inside her. "For everything." Calvin cupped her face and looked into her eyes with all the love and tenderness that had changed her life. "You don't have to thank me for loving you, Saskia. That's the easiest thing I've ever done." And it was true. Loving each other. This giant bride and this lonely cowboy who'd found each other in letters and hope and desperate loneliness was the easiest, most natural thing in the world, because real love doesn't measure in inches or expectations or fear. Real love just makes room, adjusts, finds a way to fit even when the world says it's impossible, and they fit perfectly. So here's what I want to know. Have you ever been told you were too much or not enough? Too tall, too short, too different? Have you ever been afraid that your first time would hurt, that you wouldn't measure up, that you were wrong somehow? Drop a comment and tell me your story. Because maybe someone out there needs to hear that they're not alone, that they're not too much, that the right person will make everything easy. And tell me where you're watching from. I want to know how far stories like this one travel. From Colorado to wherever you are. You are exactly the right size for the love you deserve. And your first time, whether that's intimacy or trust or vulnerability, doesn't have to hurt. Not if you find someone patient enough to make it easy.